Sometimes you'll find in a custody case that you've just gotten yourself into a position that you're behind the eight ball. The judge, for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly, has determined that you're the problem and you have a hole that you have to dig out of. And so lots of people will give up at that point. A lot of people will think that there's just nothing that they can do. But I want you to stop and put yourself into the judge's perspective. The judge is sitting in the courtroom, not seeing what's happening outside, not permitted to investigate on their own about what's happening outside, but is required to come up with decisions about your child's best interest. That's kind of a scary place to be for the judge. If you've engaged in behaviors, or if for whatever reason the evidence seems to indicate that you've behaved in behaviors that are not in your child's best interest, then you've got some work to do. The first thing that the judge is going to want to know is that it can trust you. And so, how are you supposed to rebuild trust with the court? Well, the first thing to do is to follow what the court tells you to do, even if you think it's unfair. So it may be the case that the court has determined that you were abusive or neglectful. The court may have determined that you just don't care. You're not following through. You're not adulting in some very real ways. If that's the conclusion the court has come to about you, then you need to start with some very basic objective things. Right? Any judge is going to want any parent to have the basics of adulting down before they're provided care of any child. If you have a child who has special needs, then even more so, the court's going to want to be able to know that it can trust you. So you start doing the basic things. If you're able to do so, you get a job. You have a place to live that is yours, right? You're on the lease if it's an apartment. It's not some place where you can just be kicked out, or a person can have undue influence over you, exert control over you as a threat mechanism to get you to stay. You're paying your taxes. If you have a vehicle, you have insurance. Your vehicle is safe. You're paying utilities in your own name, if at all possible. If you're in school, you're going to school. You're attending, you're getting good grades, you're doing all the stuff. Whatever it is that's within your ability that you can do to show the court that you're somebody reliable that can be depended on, you need to start doing. Now, at the same time, you probably have a relationship with your co parent that is unhealthy at the moment. And again, it may be your fault, it may be your co parent's fault, and it may be a combination. And oftentimes it probably is. So, the next thing that you need to do is to be a good co parent. Now, if you've gotten into a place with a co parent who you think is particularly toxic, if you're calling your co parent all sorts of names, sort of labeling them, for example, saying that they're a narcissist, those are the kinds of things that you need to stop. You need to be communicating as perfectly as you can. Every time your co parent is communicating with you in a negative way, if they think that they have you down and they're going to step on your neck, just sort of grind it in, then every time they do that, while you're rebuilding trust with the court, you need to show that you're going to be reliable and dependable as a co parent communicator as well. So you don't respond to the attacks, you don't return attacks in kind. You provide business like responses to information that absolutely needs to be shared about your children. And you do so in a way that is documentable. You don't talk over the phone about these things. If you do, and if it's permitted in your state, you record it. Hopefully, you have a parenting app like Our Family Wizard or Talking Parents, and you use that parenting app for your communications so that it can't be changed. So, in these various ways, you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're adulting, you're communicating in the way that you're supposed to communicate. If the court has determined that you have some sort of anger management issue or substance abuse issue or mental health issue, then you need to address those in exactly the way the court wants you to address it. You need to find qualified providers. You need to get whatever assessments need to be done, and you need to follow through on those assessments in a documentable way. You need to show the court that you're invested in improving yourself to make yourself the best co parent that you can be. You have to provide that evidence to the court. You have to provide releases so that that evidence can be provided to a guardian ad litem or with a document protective order in place to your co parent's counsel You have to show that you're making these active efforts to improve yourself so that the court can understand that you're somebody that it can trust. Now, all along this way, it's going to feel difficult because your co parent probably is not going to be assisting you, rightly or wrongly. They probably have erected gates and now they're gatekeeping. They're keeping you out. They're going to have some difficulty in opening back up those gates and tearing them down so that you can have the kind of access that you should have. It's going to feel very tempting to say to your co parent, I fixed my problems. You need to immediately give me this access. You need to treat me better. They definitely should treat you better. And they should provide you additional access to the children as soon as you're able to have it in a way that is safe if you're unsafe right now. But just because they should do that doesn't mean that they will. And it's very tempting for a person who has made significant changes in their life to get a little self righteous when they've made those changes and to feel like everyone else needs to immediately respond to the changes that they've made. If you take that attitude, it's going to be counterproductive. The court needs to see a little humility from you as you're making these changes. So you're increasing the capacity for the court to trust you, you're increasing your parenting capacity, you're improving your co parenting capacity, and you're showing that you have the humility of understanding where you were and the real desire to get to where your kids need you to be. As you do these things, you're going to elevate yourself into a parent who should have substantially equal time, hopefully joint custodial decision making. And ultimately, if your co parent refuses to tear down the gates, refuses to let you back into a co parenting situation, and if the court perceives that they should, then you may even be opening up the possibility for you to flip custody, for you to be the primary custodian in the future. But it all starts with you repairing yourself, repairing the damage you've done, whether that's to your reputation, whether it's financially, whether it is your relationship with your children, whatever it is. You need to start with you in ways that the court can understand that you're a trustworthy person to have custody and decision making for your children. The first part's all on you. If you were in this position where you're behind this eight ball, if you're in this position where the court finds you to be untrustworthy and that you're not a fit parent, then I encourage you not to give up. I encourage you to do everything you can to rehabilitate yourself in the court's eyes. Because what your children need absolutely is to have two good parents in their lives if at all possible. And you're one of those two. So I encourage you to do everything that you can to be everything you can be for your kids.